We hear everybody.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start. So, hi everybody, and thank you all for coming. We're having a special event for Eboné, and I'm thrilled to be your host today. We're here to celebrate the release of a beautiful and heartfelt short novel titled Building Bridges, a story of family and acceptance. And do you have the cover of that to show? Well, she's going to go ahead and show you that. I'll continue. So my name is Roxanne Garcia, and I'm delighted to guide you guys through this virtual tour. Oops, sorry. And all of a sudden, my notes just fell apart. Hold up. Here. Sorry, Eboné, it came off my computer when you put that up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's not your fault. I didn't know it was going to happen. So I'm going to pull it up on my phone really quick. If you guys don't mind 1 second.
So what do you think of the cover?
It looks, yeah, it looks somewhere I want to go.
Yes,
Definitely.
very peaceful.
Yes.
Yes, I like it.
Very garden-like, peaceful.
It builds curiosity too, because I want to know where that bridge is going.
Nice. That's a good description right there.
Yeah, maybe it's something a little bit cheaper on the budget.
Come on, phone. Don't play with me today.
Garage. All right, before we leave the
All right.
go outside, we'll nosy and see what our neighbors are.
All right. So,
I think, is that you in the background? We can hear your background.
Oh, I'm sorry.
so we will explore the world of Eboné's compelling story and learn more about the inspiration behind it. In today's event, we'll hear from the author herself, Eboné Brown, as she takes us on a journey through her novel, shares insights into her creative process, and discusses the themes by making building bridges and such a touching and relevant work. So we have an agenda today. So before she speaks, I'm going to just break it down a little bit on how we're going to do it. Of course, it's going to be the introduction of the story, and Eboné will provide a brief overview of the short novel, including central themes and characters that make the story so captivating. And then we're also going to get her insights. We're going to find out what Eboné will share her inspiration behind it, her writing journey, and her personal connections that she has with the book's themes. And then she's going to read part of it for us. So we'll have the privilege of listening to her as she reads the exclusive excerpt from the novel, allowing us to experience the magic of her storytelling firsthand. And then we'll also have questions and answers. So this is our chance to ask Eboné questions about the book, her writing process, or anything else that we are curious about. So please, if you have any questions, submit it into the chat, and then we will read them. Maybe not all of them, depending on how many there are, but we'll try to get to as many as possible. And then we'll get to the closing remarks, where Eboné will wrap up the event by sharing her hopes, her aspirations for building bridges, and expressing her gratitude to everyone who has supported her on her journey. So it says, throughout the event, we encourage you to actively engage and share your thoughts and questions in that chat. We'll be selecting some of your questions to ask Eboné during the Q&A, so don't hesitate to participate. So it says we are in a truly inspiring and enlightening event today as we delve into Building Bridges, a story of family and acceptance with its talented author, Eboné Brown. So sit back, relax, and let's embark on this literary journey together. Without further ado, let's welcome Eboné Brown to this virtual stage, and let's celebrate and the celebration of Building Bridges begin. Eboné, so over to you.
Thank you, Roxanne. So I think everybody here knows me, but for any of you who don't, as mentioned, my name is Eboné, and I'm the author of Building Bridges, a story of family and acceptance. The themes of the story include, well, the main one is forgiveness. And I chose that for this book because forgiveness is something that's really important. It's an important part of, of our lives, because, you know, if you're a living person, you're going to find yourself in a situation where you have to forgive someone. Often we hear the term forgive and forget, but that's actually inaccurate. It's actually forgive and let go. And forgiveness is a journey. So in the story, we actually follow that journey of forgiveness. Okay. I forgot to pin myself. Okay. So I was talking about forgiveness. So throughout the story, we have our main character David, and he has to learn to forgive. And it's a process that he goes through. But what's interesting is that he has to before he's even gets to the point where he can forgive, he has to be vulnerable and he has to be honest. Because it takes vulnerability and honesty to truly be able to forgive someone. So we see that throughout the story. Another character we have, in addition to David, is his wife Hannah. So she's his support throughout the story. So those are our two main characters. There's also the character Aunt Jessie, who's a very important person in David's life because she's the one who raised David. And throughout the story, she actually helps him to learn how to forgive. And she's something that's like throughout his childhood, she was the one constant. So we really see that. Let's see. So some of the other characters that you'll see, we actually do. We have Hannah's parents. They're very skeptical, or they're unsure about David, who he is, because they've never met him. So they meet him, in the first chapter that we'll be looking at later. We also have the characters Peter and Autumn. Those are Peter is David's childhood friend. They've been friends for a long time. And then there's some other characters that I'm not going to mention because I don't want to give the story away. All right, so we've looked at the characters. We've looked a little bit about one of the themes in this, it being about forgiveness, and we can't accept someone unless we forgive them. So what's interesting is I actually do have another book in the works that's a sequel to this first one. And this one is Building Bridges, The Art of Understanding. So that's the next book that follows this one. And I have a solid idea for a third one. So I'm thinking there'll be 3 in the series. So are there any questions that anyone has for me so far? You can check the chat. All right. So one question I get asked is, how do I come up with the characters? And so I think what I'll do is I'll kind of show or tell you how I outline because that's actually the first step, is outlining your story, and then you write it. So every writer, every author is different. They have a different process that they like, or a different way to outline. And I like to take my time when I'm doing my outline. So I start off with the title, the genre. So the genre is contemporary fiction, family life fiction. And then I have a summary, which is like 2 or 3 sentences of what the entire book is about. And then I go into character profiles. And within those character profiles, I look at their background, their personality, what challenge they're going to face in the story. And I look at character growth and or goals that I have for that character, or what role do they play. Then I go into the plot outline, and I like to use, you can either use a 3-act plot outline or a 4-act. 4-act just kind of breaks up the 3-act a little bit more. So you have Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, and then under each act you have basically your plot outline for each chapter. So basically, by the time you finish with your plot outline, you know what's going to happen in your story from beginning to end. So you know what's going to happen in the middle, the beginning, the middle, and the end. Other writers, they might want to they have the beginning and they have the ending, but they don't have the middle quite yet. And then something extra that I like to do is I like to spend a little bit more time and not necessarily write the chapters, but I kind of do like a summary of what I want, like a little bit more detail of what I want in the chapter. And I might even put just a little bit of dialogue in my chapter summaries. So that's how I outline. When we're focusing on the characters, I want to make sure that the characters are real. They're real to me. If they're real to me, I know they're going to be real to the reader. So I take some time really thinking about, like, some things that I put in their background, you might not actually see in the story, but you see it reflected in the character's personality or how they react in certain situations. So you do see that a little bit in the book. Okay.
Right. Well, I have one question that that we can ask you also was there anything personal in your life that actually kind of inspired you to write this story based on forgiveness?
I think we all collect stories throughout our life, either from our own experiences or from the experiences of our friends and family, or from other people. I was always taught that it's that forgiveness is is a process. So an example that that my mom likes to use is that there could be a situation that happens to a person and it leaves a scar. And the scars is a reminder of what happened to them. They might forgive the person, but the scars are still there. So, but what happens is those scars become less of a burden because you've forgiven that person. So, and forgiveness is based on who you are as a person, not on the other, not on who you're forgiving. So there's actually a conversation that David has with his Aunt Jessie where they actually talk about that.
Before we move on to any more questions, did you want to actually read part of it, and then maybe from that people will have more questions?
Yeah, that would be a good idea. Okay, so I'm just going to read part of chapter 1. Okay, so chapter 1, road trip, meeting the in-laws. Hannah and David had been planning their upcoming road trip for several weeks now. Although David had visited San Diego before, this would be his first time staying with Hannah's parents, Maggie and Stephen. The couple was eagerly looking forward to the family reunion that Maggie and Stephen were hosting, but David couldn't help feeling a little anxious about meeting Hannah's parents for the first time. Despite his nerves, he was determined to make a good impression and was excited about the prospect of spending time with Hannah's family. "Are you ready for this?" Hannah asked as they set off. David fidgeted with his seatbelt. "I'm nervous, to be honest. Your family's so big, and I don't know if they'll like me." Hannah rolled her eyes. "Don't be silly. They will love you. And besides, we'll have the guest house to ourselves." David nodded, but he felt uneasy. He wished he could shake it off and enjoy the journey, but his nerves were getting the best of him. During their road trip along the coast, they made sure to stop at different towns and cities to explore their unique offerings. From sampling delectable treats at charming cafes and browsing through local shops for souvenirs, they relished every moment of their trip. They also indulged in scenic hikes, soaking in breathtaking views of the coastline. And when they went whale watching, they were awestruck by the majestic creatures in their natural habitat. Despite all the beauty around them, however, David couldn't help but feel an anxiousness that lingered within him. Hannah noticed that David was becoming increasingly anxious the closer they got to San Diego. "What if they don't like me?" he asked. "They will," Hannah assured him. "Just be yourself." When they arrived at Maggie and Stephen's home, David was struck by its grandeur. It was a sprawling estate with a beautiful garden and pool. He thought to himself, "This is where Hannah grew up?" They were greeted by Maggie and Stephen, who gave them a warm welcome. "David, it's so nice to finally meet you," Maggie said. David smiled nervously, likewise. As the day went on, David and Hannah mingled with their relatives. They met cousins, aunts, and uncles they had never met before. They shared stories, laughed, and ate delicious food. As the day turned into night, David began to feel uneasy. He noticed that Maggie and Stephen seemed distant and cold towards him. He tried to brush it off and enjoy the party, but it was hard to ignore. Do you
Right,
want me
thank
to
you.
continue?
Well, does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask from what you've heard so far? And if you're not quite ready for a question, I do have some more, if you're willing to answer them.
Yes. I can
So,
answer some more questions.
I
you've
put one
already-
in the chat.
Oh, let me see. Oh, I don't see it. Do you have it, Ebony? Do you see the question?
Um,
Oh, there it is. It says, do you take a writing class or did you just start writing?
well, I took classes for English and when I was in college.
Mm.
And something else I did is I actually went to YouTube because there's something on YouTube called AuthorTube, and it's where there are a lot of authors that are sharing like writing tips, and so I went there and I pick up tips from there because they might so you could basically put together like your own writing course for free using AuthorTube.
Mhm.
There's also a resource called Readsy, and they offer a lot of things for that are free or that are low cost. So those are all different things that I've used to help with my writing. But since I'm new at this, I want to continue to get better.
And then another question is, what was the most challenging part about writing? Because you said you had a sequel that you have coming up. Do
I
you
think,
have your challenging parts for that?
well, this isn't my first book. This is my first fiction, like contemporary fiction. My first book was nonfiction. So that transition from writing nonfiction to writing contemporary fiction is interesting, because when you're writing nonfiction, you don't necessarily have to worry about developing characters or having a plot per se. Where those are things that are really important to writing, fiction. So that transition was interesting. That took some time, and you have to think more creatively when you're writing fiction. And then writing a sequel, like keeping all the storylines together, from one book to the next book. That way, they're it's the same characters. You're not rewriting the characters when you get to the next book. It's it's the same characters, but they've grown from the last time the reader has seen them. So you want to keep that character growth, but you still want it to be where it's still the same, the same person that you're writing about.
Okay. And then also the themes of abandonment and forgiveness are like central to this first book. Can you share why you chose to explore these themes and their significance?
Because those are things that we actually see quite often. Someone can be abandoned. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are alone. They could still feel abandonment even if they're in a house full of people. So those are themes that that everybody can relate to. So that's why I chose them.
Okay. So without giving too much away from this current book, for those who haven't read it, when you read it, something that I find like awesome about it is that she gives the characters a personality without having to give them a physical face. So it's nice to be able to read something and you get to picture what they look like, because we're all from different backgrounds. We all have different customs that we are used to. So it's nice that if I wanted someone that was relatable to me, could be David or Hannah. This person could be Black, this person could be Mexican, Filipino, you don't know. And I really enjoyed that. And I was just wondering, what made you do that?
Well, there's a rule, show not tell. So I wanted to show who they were without telling you who they were, if that makes sense. So I wanted to show them as people, but not give them a physical description, because I like the fact that then the reader is able to picture who, what they look like and who they are. Because when you give them, like when the author gives the person a face, it might be different than what you thought. You start reading, you might have this character in mind, what they look like, and then you read the description and they might not necessarily match. So I decided, in my books, that's going to be something I'll do. I just won't give them, I won't use physical descriptions of the characters. So I don't say their eye color, I don't say their hair color, I don't say how much they weigh, whether they're tall, they're short. There are no physical descriptions at all
Right.
of the characters. And so I
Um,
really wanted
yep. Sorry.
the reader to be able to really immerse themselves in the story.
Oh, I like that. And Kelly, did you have a question?
Okay, I'm having trouble with my chat. I was trying to put it in the chat, it wouldn't go. So that's why I had to raise my hand. Um, I find it interesting that you chose a male for your protagonist. Is that right? Yeah,
Yeah, that's
the
correct.
main character. See if I can remember my English terms. Um, so well, I'm just curious, being a female, how did you come about the choice to make the main character a male?
I actually don't know. It just happened that way. I'm not even sure. I think I think Hannah is just as much in this is just as much in the story as David, because she's by his side the entire time. But the story is very much about David.
Okay.
So we actually in the next book it's a little bit more about Hannah. We see her a little bit more, but it is interesting that that's just how it turned out. So actually how I ended up with this story is it started off as a very short story, just a few pages, and I let my mom read it and she said, "Well, what happens next?" And I said, "I don't know." And then I'm like, I wanted to know what happened next, so that meant that I had to write it myself. So that's how we ended up with this book. So this is it is short. It's technically a novelette. A novelette is it's not as long as a novella, but it's not as short as a short story. So it's about 11,000 words, but there's a lot that happens in those 11,000 words.
Does anybody have any other questions that they want to ask them? And if your chat's not working, feel free to raise your hand. That worked perfectly. So while people are thinking about their question, another one is, did you do any research for these books? Like, did you look at character, things to add to your characters or the situation or anything like that?
I did, and I also looked at different locations because I give descriptions of different locations. So the story takes place and it starts off in they're on their way to San Diego, driving down the coast. The main characters, they move from San Francisco to Monterey. So part of the story takes place in Monterey. They also go to Pacifica, and they also take a trip to Mendocino. So to really capture, the essence of those places, I had to make sure that I looked up those, those locations. I looked at pictures. Um, but there are also places I've been to. So I was able to kind of go from what I remembered about those places.
Okay.
So and then let's see, I have uh knitting and yarn is also something that's featured in this story. So there's a yarn shop in Pacific Grove. So they actually go to that yarn shop, and there's a yarn shop in Pacifica. So they actually go to that yarn shop in the story. So um as so I talked about what it's like going to a yarn shop. So just so that part's based off of my own experience going to yarn shops and what it's like when you go for the first time.
Okay. So we have another question, and that's, where can we buy your book?
Okay, so my book is available at you could get it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes and Noble. You could also go into any physical bookstore. But you can also, for those of you that live in the Pittsburgh area, you could actually find my book at Railroad Book Depot. You're able to purchase it there as well. But one thing I'd like to do is, for anyone who is interested, I can put the link in the chat. So you for Amazon, if you'd like to purchase from Amazon.
Any other questions from anybody yet? Because I have another one. So the question is, now that you have, this is technically your third book, but second in your fiction. So how has your experience from the first book to this, to your fiction, moved over to your second one?
That's a good question. So can you ask it again?
Well, so basically, so how's your experience as an author evolved? So now
Okay.
that you've dipped your toes in it for the first time with your first fiction, now that you've got more experience under your belt, how do you feel you've evolved since?
I want this next book to be better than the first one. Because I want to continue to become better as a writer. So I'm taking a little bit more time on the outline and on developing the characters a little bit more, even though they're well developed characters in the first book, but I want that to carry over to the second book and maybe even develop them a little bit more. The next book focuses on building bridges, the art of understanding. So this one focuses on communication, and being able to adapt to change. So that's what I'm focusing on in for the next book. So I really, and this it will also be longer, because instead of being a novelette, it will be a novella. So I'm aiming for 25,000 words. So so that's my goal for it. It may be a little less, or a little more, but that's what I'm aiming for. So that'll be twice as long as my current book. So so always working to be a better writer.
And so after the second book, do you feel like you're going to continue it to a third?
I have an idea for a third. We'll see if that idea is actually enough for an entire book. So there may be a third one. If not a third one in this series, there'll definitely be a third book with different characters.
Maybe branch out to other characters, maybe like the background of the aunt or someone else.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking of doing a they call them side stories when you do that.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking of doing a side story about about David's friends, Peter and Autumn. So that's one possibility. And so I have some ideas I'm working on for a third one, but I want to get the second one written and published. So I'm hoping to get that one published in February. Yeah, that's the goal. So if anyone is interested, I am currently looking for there are two roles. There are beta readers, and then there are advanced copy readers. So the roles are a little bit different. Like a beta reader, you're getting a copy and you're able to you give me feedback. So you give me feedback on the characters, are they well developed? Does give me feedback about the plot? Does the pacing of the book? So you're able to give me that kind of feedback. So that's the beta readers, and the advanced copy readers. They help to actually promote the book because they get an advanced copy before it's published, and they're able to actually help promote the book to other people, and they write reviews for Amazon and for Goodreads. So I'm looking for people that are that will be interested in either being a beta reader or getting an advanced copy and writing a review. And whether you're a beta reader or advanced copy, you do like the advanced copy. It's kind of unfinished. It's like the draft just before the final draft, or the draft before proofreading is what I should say. So beta readers and advanced copy readers do get a finished copy at as a gift for helping me you know uh, you know to get the book out there.
So one last call for any questions that you guys might have, because I have one last question before she pretty much wraps it up. So I guess my last question is, it's rare in these days to find entertainment, whether it is watching television or movies, or even reading a book, that you find something that is kind of wholesome. It's nice to know that there are things that we can read that doesn't violate our brains sometimes. So I want to say I appreciate it. And of course, most of us know that you are a witness, and that helps you to push that through. Is that possibly one of the reasons what made you want to write also this type of book?
Yes, because there's some really there's some stuff out there that's being sold as books that people are reading, but there's like this whole field where people want to read something that's wholesome. Like they want to read a wholesome romantic story that's clean, that they can feel that doesn't have stuff in it. So but it's really is an underserved category. So so I wanted to write a book that that people can read and feel comfortable and about reading and really enjoy.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm sure that there are plenty of people. I mean, what were you, number 14? Did you say?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when my book first came out, it was within the family life fiction category, it was number 14. So it was in the top 100, and then in other categories, it was in the top 100 for the entire month of September.
Right. And I mean, you're not going to get ratings like that if it wasn't any good. So I just want to tell you I appreciated the book, And I can't, you know, wait to actually read the following one. So I look forward to that.
Oh, you're welcome. And thanks everyone for coming, for your support.
Anytime.
And thank you, Ebony. I'm
Thank
looking
you,
forward
Ebony.
to reading it.
Me too.
Yes, I just placed my order tonight. Read it.
Okay.
And you'll notice the price point is pretty good too.
Yeah, it is. I saw that. Very nice. Yes.
So does
And
anybody need the link to purchase?
I found it on Amazon. I just searched
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Sure
if yeah,
did.
you could go to Amazon and just if you put just my name, you know, spelled Ebone, under books, then my both of my books will pop up. The one I did on health and wellness, and this one on, you know, in contemporary fiction.
Thank you, Roxanne, too. You've been a wonderful host.
Thank you.
hostess.
I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna do it for my girl.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
Thank you,
did good.
Roxanne. You're very professional.
Thank you. Trying.
I enjoyed it.
Oh, we got a visitor. Sorry. Sorry, this guy was gonna wreck my.
Want to see what's going on.
Yeah, he's a nosy guy.
It was nice meeting everyone.